Is the iPad 11 the best budget iPad, or is it just another incremental update that doesn't really change much? I've been using the iPad 11 for a while now, testing everything from media consumption to gaming as well as note-taking. And to be honest, I kinda have mixed feelings about this one. Don't miss this video as today we're gonna break it all down, the good, the bad, and we'll find out whether it's actually worth your money. My name is Prithviraj and I create videos on productivity, tech, and life. I recently picked up the new iPad from the Apple store here in Mumbai, and also I did a live unboxing there, and I wasn't really impressed. It felt the exact same. I have been using its predecessor a lot, which is the iPad 10 Gen. Majority of the aspects has been very similar. It looks exactly the same and also feels exactly the same. Nothing is really new over here except the performance, as it features the A16 Bionic chipset. And also we'll be discussing the note-taking aspect as well. But before that, let's start with the basics. Alright, first things first, the design. If you are hoping for a major design refresh, then that's not happening here. You're still getting that all aluminum body with flat edges, but this time we have an 11-inch display. We have the speaker grills and the power button on the top. The power button also acts as the fingerprint scanner, or Touch ID as Apple likes to call it. We still don't have Face ID on this iPad, but to be honest, I don't really mind, as on large devices like tablets, the Touch ID simply makes much more sense. We have the volume buttons on the right, the speaker grills and the Type-C port at the bottom, and the magnetic pins for connecting keyboard on the left side. It's still lightweight and super easy to carry around, and also it's available in some nice colors. So in terms of build quality, there's nothing to complain out over here. There is also a cellular variant available in case that's something you might require. I'm using the Wi-Fi only variant cause it simply works out for me. Now let's talk about the most important aspect of any tablet, and that is the display. The iPad 11 features an 11-inch liquid retina IPS display with a resolution of 1640 by 2360 pixels. Also, it has a brightness of 500 nits. The display is really sharp, bright, and perfect for media consumption. I have been binge watching Netflix on my flight back home from Mumbai, and I had a great experience. It only features a screen refresh rate of 60Hz, which isn't really the smoothest display, being very honest. And also, I didn't expect Apple to feature a 120Hz display on the iPad 11 solely because even the new iPad Air M3 has a display refresh rate of 60Hz, and that's really sad. But this one is big. It's still not laminated, which means there's a slight gap between the glass and the actual display. If you're coming from an older iPad, you might not even notice it, but for digital artists and serious note takers, this can be somewhat of a deal breaker. We'll talk about this aspect a little later. But the overall viewing experience is great on this device. You won't be facing any issues binge watching your favorite series and movies. And speaking of media consumption, the speakers on the iPad are solid. Good stereo separation, loud enough for most people, but obviously they are not as impressive as what we get in the iPad Air or the iPad Pro. But the audio has that warmth that I often look for. Hence, listening to music here is check. Everything sounds full and balanced with great clarity, so the dialogues would be clear. And also, we are super close to hitting 100k subs on this channel, so I would really appreciate if you could consider hitting that subscribe button. Would definitely help me out a lot. Alright, let's get into the business end of this tablet, and let's talk about its performance, because this is where things get interesting, as this is the only differentiating factor from the iPad 10 Gen. The iPad 11 features the Apple A16 Bionic chipset paired with 6 gigs of RAM, and it's running on iPadOS 18. And storage wise, we get a few options: 128, 256, as well as a 512 gigs variant. The base variant finally features 128 gigs. If you remember, the iPad 10 Gen only offered 64 gigs and 256 gigs variant. We did not have the sweet midpoint of 128 gigs. So this was a much needed change. And in real world usage, this thing is fast. Apps open quickly, multitasking is smooth, and also it excels in gaming. Here are the benchmarks on Geekbench and Antutu benchmarks in case you are into nerdy stuff like that. And as you can see, it really performed well. I remember the iPad 10 Gen had a score of like 16,000 on Geekbench, whereas the iPad 11 has scored 20k. So that's some noticeable improvement. For productivity, it handles apps like Notion, GoodNotes, and Microsoft Office effortlessly. And thanks to iPadOS 18, you get some solid multitasking features. And also in iPadOS 18, we get many customization options as well. Like we get this dark tinted icons that I really like. And also you can set between large and small icon sizes. And since it's an iPad, we can expect software updates for many more years to come. No one can beat Apple in terms of longevity. Overall, the A16 Bionic is a solid upgrade. It's not really groundbreaking, but it does give this iPad some much needed longevity, as I previously mentioned. And speaking of gaming, I tested out games like Asphalt, BGMI, GTA Vice City, and a few more. And honestly, the performance is solid. You can run most games at medium to high settings without major frame drops. Everything felt smooth in my experience so far. I haven't really noticed any stutters, but yeah, if I start facing them in future, then I'll surely point them out. That being said, this is still a 60Hz display, so you're not getting the ultra smooth refresh rate like that of iPad Pro or many other Android tablets in this segment. And also, since it features an all aluminum body, the iPad 11 will definitely heat up when you're playing for long sessions, or maybe while exporting a video. And speaking of that, what about video editing? If you're into basic video editing, the iPad can definitely handle it. Apps like iMovie and Premiere Rush run flawlessly while working with 1080p HD videos, but with 4K footage, footage, it will surely start to struggle. You can trim and add effects and export without any major slowdowns, but if you're dealing with multiple layers of 4K footage, you will start to notice some lag. I primarily prefer DaVinci Resolve for video editing, but running that app can be a real headache over here. And also it makes sense as this tablet is not marketed for max performance, but yeah, if that's something you might require, then you should reconsider. The A16 chipset is powerful, but it's not in the same level of the Apple Silicon M series chipsets that we find in the Air and the Pro models. So overall, for casual gaming and video editing, this iPad does a great job, but if you're looking for some pro level performance, then you need something more powerful. The iPad 11 features a 12 megapixel rear camera as well as a 12 megapixel selfie camera. Here are a few sample photos that I clicked with the iPad 11. So this is the front camera test of the iPad 11. Whatever you're listening to is also coming from the iPad, and as you can see, the quality is good enough, so you won't be facing any issues attending meetings and video calls. And it's also 5 PM at a very cloudy day over here in my city, so it's not the brightest conditions, but it's still doing a great job, I must say, because there are not many visible grains, although I can see some over here near the door over there. But overall, it's quite nice, so yeah, it should work out well for you. When it comes to the battery life, the iPad 11 features a 7698 mAh battery. Apple claims up to 10 hours of web browsing or video playback, and in my testing, that holds up pretty well. It lasted almost a full day with mixed usage. And also there's one weird thing. Apple only mentions it features a 28.93 watt-hour battery on their website and all-day battery on Amazon. They didn't really mention the battery capacity anywhere. I had to look up multiple articles to find the actual size of 7698 mAh. Why do this, Apple? And while it does have Type-C for charging, there is no real fast charging, so it still takes over 2 hours to get fully charged. Not the worst, but definitely something you should keep in mind. Now let's talk about the aspect because of which many of you actually watch my videos for, and that is note-taking and the overall stylus experience. The iPad 11 supports the first gen Apple Pencil and the USB Type-C Apple Pencil. It sadly still doesn't have magnetic charging support, hence it doesn't support the second gen Apple Pencil as well as the Apple Pencil Pro. I recommend that you get the Type-C Apple Pencil as it's comparatively much more convenient, as you'll have to deal with a lot of adapters and stuff if you get the first gen Apple Pencil. It's clunky, easy to lose and totally unnecessary. And let's not forget the risk of losing this tiny cap on the pencil. You will have to buy the Apple Pencil separately, so yeah, please keep that in mind. Now let's talk about the writing experience here. The writing feel here on the iPad 11 is super smooth. The strokes feel natural, I didn't face any issues with latency, and the palm projection aspect is spot on. Although like I previously mentioned, the display is not laminated, as in you can visibly see a slight gap between the screen and the display, but it's not that noticeable, to be honest. But if you're a digital artist, then this can turn up to be real annoying, especially when you're trying to get your work done with maximum precision. But for note taking, it won't be that much of an issue. The biggest advantage if you have an iPad over any other Android tablet is that you get a lot of options to choose from if you're in the market looking for the best note-taking app. My personal favorite is GoodNote 6. The handwriting experience has been great using this app, and it feels really natural. I literally manage my entire life using GoodNote 6 using my daily planner template. It really helps me stay super productive and accountable. I'll be leaving the link of my template in the description box below the like button, so you can check it out if you're interested. And GoodNote 6 is also a paid app, so please keep that in mind. But the default Notes app is amazing as well. Apple Notes. You can access it for free. It is great for managing text-based notes. It's super powerful in that aspect. And it can be a great starting point to take handwritten notes as well before you actually decide on buying any other note-taking app. Why I say this is because the handwriting experience on Apple Notes is not the best, especially when we compare to apps like GoodNote 6, Notewise or Notability. You can't even zoom inside Apple Notes. But looking at it in a general way, this can be a great device if you're a student and looking for a tablet where you can take your class notes, or maybe import your PDFs and use it as your default workbook. It totally excels in that aspect. You will be able to take notes quite nicely over here, and the writing feels really amazing on this iPad. Here's a screenshot of the current pricing of the iPad 11 on Amazon India, and here's a screenshot of the current pricing of the Type-C Apple Pencil. If we talk about the pricing, it's fairly priced, as the last time Apple was offering the 64 gigs variant in the same price, whereas we are getting the 128 gigs this time at this price point. So what's the verdict? Should you buy the iPad 11, and is it the best budget iPad? Well, absolutely. It checks many boxes that you need in a budget tablet. The iPad 11 is a solid choice for students, casual users, or anyone who wants a reliable tablet for media consumption, gaming and light productivity. In short, it's a great tablet for the average user. The A16 Bionic chipset gives it a performance boost over the last one. The display is great despite not being laminated, and the battery life is pretty solid. But if you already have the iPad 10 Gen, this upgrade is not really worth it. But if you're into digital art, then the iPad here is a much better choice because of its laminated display and better accessories support, as in you get to use the flagship Apple Pencil Pro along with it. For first-time iPad buyers or for those upgrading for older models like the 8th Gen or the 9th Gen, this is a great budget option. But if you were expecting major changes from the last model, then this might not be the upgrade that you are looking for. And if this is your first iPad, then there are certain things you should know about that will help you make the most of your iPad. Click here on this video and over there we have discussed 15 hidden iPad tricks that will blow your mind.